This is Conversations with a Citizen. I am your host, Tia Carol Jones. I am here today with Kevin Fair. Kevin is the owner of I Play Games. Kevin, welcome to the show.
Hey, what's going on? I appreciate you guys having me. Should I adjust real quick?
Oh,
Or just
got
I'm gonna
you.
just leave
You
it like
good.
smooth?
You
All right,
good,
cool.
yeah.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, I always love starting off with the joke that I like long walks on the beach, that type of thing. No, but I am a Chicago-born South Sider who, realistically went through, high school here, Morgan Park High School, and a good portion of my experiences as, a business owner definitely were shaped by the landscape that I was raised in. I always want to give big shout outs to mom and dad for, bringing together a nice, healthy family of 7. So I had to learn how to share things, which once again definitely kind of forms how I use and treat business. And went to Morgan Park High School, then went to an HBCU in Memphis, Tennessee, where I lived for 4 years. LeMoyne-Owen College, shout outs to them. Homecoming game getting ready to come up soon, so I'm always super excited about that. And then I basically came back after I graduated from undergrad to the housing crash, which really made me think about starting my own business. Funny enough, I had a really great opportunity with one of the big 4 accounting firms as I came out of undergrad. But, as I kind of experienced what it was like to live in the real world and work for someone else, I think I really started to think about what I was passionate about and how I would work for myself.
Okay. How did your love of video games lead you to start I Play Games?
Oh, well, that's really easy. When you don't like your job and people ask you what you like to do, I said, well, I like playing games.
Okay.
So that became a really easy way to name what it was that I wanted to do. And I think more about it, I just started to kind of reflect. As I kind of thought about, man, I really don't like, I put a lot of work in to get my college degree, had something in computer science, but then went into accounting for the most part. I started to think about, well, what do I like to do, right? And I think I was able to kind of have that moment where you could go, well, if you could do whatever you wanted to do, and get paid for it, what would that job look like? Now, guess what? It didn't help anything that, these types of jobs didn't exist at the time. And so, you kind of think about, oh, shoot, well, how does this even form into something that could become a job at some point? And for me, it was really easy to kind of start thinking about, well, I really like video games, and right now competitions in video games, really hadn't taken off, right? Esports is a big deal now, everybody knows about it, but beforehand, no one really knew what competitive games were. So, I kind of thought back to, how much I, enjoy making friends playing video games. My older cousin, who was a really great role model for me, we played video games together. My brother and I, we played videos. That's a way that we really bonded. Okay. So yeah, hosting video game tournaments was something I used to do in high school. So I said, well, why don't I go back to trying that? And I think, the more that I kind of thought about, who I was as a person, someone who, brought the fun to events, and, how do I make a way to, create icebreakers, socialize with people, and it was video games. So, I really kind of moved into this space, super green, didn't know too much anything about owning or starting a business, but I knew something about starting an event. And so, I really kind of took those experiences and moved that into, hey, well, I'm going to professionalize this space, over time. And, me alongside with a few other people really kind of pioneered the space here in Chicago.
What are some of the services I Play Games provides?
Oh, so the easy one, everybody always asks this. The easy one is, hey, Kevin, I need 50 PlayStations, Xboxes, and monitors, right? Okay. So you come, most groups come to us up front. They go, man, I need some equipment, bro. You got to help me out with that. So the equipment rental portion, always super straightforward and easy. Then right after that, I think the one that is just as important, but people don't realize it until they need it, is the consulting portion. So a good portion of the times people go, great, we want to engage a group with video games. We know that we need equipment, but then after they get the equipment, the question is, how do we go about doing that, right? So for us, it's like, who's your target audience? Are you trying to get kids? Are you trying to get families? Are you trying to get adults? What does your activation look like? Which will dictate how much equipment you need, what type of space that you need. Imagine if, we say, hey, we want to run a video game tournament here. Well, I say, well, what game? That may depend on what internet you have, so then we start talking about power, all of those things. So, you know, the planning portion for us is like, hey, so we'll get down to even the most minuscule little detail and try to work something out for you. Then I think the last, proponent, the last service that we provide is a good portion of staff. And so a lot of times people are personally trained by me, and they not only come help set up, tear down, all that type of stuff, but they maintain the equipment and they deal with people from a customer service standpoint. So, I try to tell people this story. I remember, as a kid, we went out to Orland Park and there was these video games and I didn't get a turn to play. And I cried all the way back home because my experience was ruined, right? And so I try and, remember that kid and try to tell all of our staff, guess what? We're making experiences, and guess what? People remember good experiences, but people really remember bad experiences, right? So, we do our best to try to provide, experiences that people can say, hey man, this was really a lot of fun. My kids had a ball. We're looking forward to coming back. You guys bring really great energy. The equipment's always ready and maintained for us to, make a really, once again, a really happy experience for people. So, in a nutshell, I always tell people our elevator pitch. We are your turnkey solution for live and virtual video game events, providing equipment, staff, and of course, the planning.
Why do you think esports is growing in popularity?
So I think the reason that esports has probably grown in popularity is probably could come down to one or two really, focused things. So we had virtual products for years and nobody cared until 2020. I don't know what the coincidence was. I have no idea. No, more seriously, I think the pandemic and the quarantine really caused people to look at alternative ways to kind of have things that can be fun. And even though, esports and competitive video games have probably been around now for what you could probably consider 40 decades, rather, for 40 years, the growth in it has come, A, because of the internet, B, because more kids are prone to talking about their experiences in video games. As beforehand, video games was a very local activity. Now it's a very global activity, with connectivity with the internet. And now I think the same set of parents who grew up playing and enjoying, their digital hobbies are looking at their kids and they're a bit more fond of like the concept that, hey, like they're creating their own world in space here. And these competitions are really more of a reflection of how they kind of are expressing themselves in the space. And then guess what? I tell people the biggest proponent is the STEAM and STEM aspects of it. I fixed my very first computer when my regular Nintendo broke at home. And so for me, it was like, hey, I want to take this apart, figure out why it's not working anymore. And I don't think we had the context in 1992 of what I was actually doing, which was I put my hands on my very first motherboard as a kid. And, part of, for us being able to go into schools and do multi-week workshops, I always tell parents, can you tell me any other thing that inspires kids to problem solve without any inherent reward? Video games gives kids to sit down, read, think about a problem, and then apply their own type of solution to it. And realistically, when we used to read books and do the book reports, you got a free pizza at the end. Right. Well, kids are beating video games and they're not getting any pizza. They're happy to kind of figure out those types of problems. And I think, again, as adults, we're becoming more keen to that aspect of it. And that's why I think esports is growing.
What are your thoughts on the upcoming esports arena that's coming to Brownsville?
Well, honestly, I get excited about projects like that. I think, having been someone who's traveled to, I Play Games travels to a lot of different, states. We go all over the country, realistically, to put these things together. So I've seen the value and efficacy of something like that, where, hey, it becomes a really great draw for the city. It becomes something where we can host, national and international tournaments. And I think that's really cool. I think when you stop and kind of think about the ability to kind of grow business in that way, I get inspired by that. I also try and make sure that, as things like this happen for me, including everybody is really what's important to me. And I think what we'll start to see over time is we'll see how that kind of, gets enacted in a lot of ways. And I get really excited behind the idea that we could host, the National League of Legends tournament, or we could host an Overwatch League event here in Chicago, which, as a business owner for all of the, young entrepreneurs here, it presents really great opportunity.
How can a life of playing video games turn into a lucrative career?
Well, I think it's always really interesting because people see posts on Facebook and they go, "What exactly do you do?" And I think part of one of the things we've super focused on, especially with our workshops in schools, is career pathways. Right? You could ask anybody, "Hey man, do you guys really just love AAU basketball?" And the answer is like, "Well, no," but we know the value of teenagers and young teens really kind of learning about the industry at large, right? And you know that, hey, guess what? If I don't become an NBA or a WNBA player, you get into sports medicine, you get into journalism, you become a a person that's in analysis. All of those different career pathways exist in it. And so part of what I try to do a lot of times is go, great, here's a way where I can find out what's your hobby as a kid. And maybe we can take your love and passion for video games and direct your career path in that, right? So, same way that, a good portion of traditional sports has, an entire media industry behind it. Video games has the same thing. Just came from a conference where people were talking about mental health in video games. So there's a whole medical aspect that comes to it as well. And I think really when I get asked that question, I try and tell people the thing that I had to do in order to find my career in the space was I had to reflect on who Kevin Fair was, right? And I could think back to bringing my Nintendo 64 and Dreamcast, to high school and trying to organize these Madden and 2K tournaments and really kind of realizing how fun building a community was. And then guess what? When I became an adult, I built a community again, and I didn't even plan on it that way, right? I just found myself really kind of falling into who Kevin Fair was, and then that outwardly reflected through video games in that way. So, no, man, you guys, you've got a whole new world that's changing in front of you. And, I always try to deliver to the youth, man, think about who you are and what you're passionate about, because your passion will drive you past obstacles, things that you don't know. If you're passionate about it, you'll want to learn more about it. When you have mistakes, you'll go, man, let me go back and try to fix that. If you're not passionate about it, you'll quit when you'll be like, dude, this is too hard, So, I don't tell anybody to try to copy somebody else's job. I try to say, figure out, who you are, and then try to go into a space and fill a void.
What is your favorite game system, and what is your favorite game?
Dun, dun, dun. I was provided a list of questions for this. You see the other ones, I didn't even have to try hard on. That's easy. I got to that one, and I'm still working on that. And so, to be honest, I try to think about, as a kid, I had my regular Nintendo, the Nintendo Entertainment System, probably through the life cycle of the Super Nintendo, which was, into like 1992 into 1994. So I probably played that the most and got a lot of inspiration from the Nintendo Entertainment System. But if I had to talk about something that I just spent a lot of time on and I probably developed and bonded, with my brother the most, it's probably the Nintendo GameCube.
Okay.
The GameCube had, when the new Smash Brothers came out, we knew what we were excited for. There's always a funny story to that one as well. We raised money by doing odd jobs so that we could buy this, brand new GameCube at the time. So, we spent an entire summer. So there's a lot of connection between, hey, we saved up money for this. We bought our own system. And I think it's a great story. I try and tell kids when they go, can you get me and I'll be like, well, did you save any money to buy your own yet? So the GameCube definitely, probably I would say right now, is the best system, and I'm just going to say that so I can shut that part of the question down. And then favorite game, that's a tough one too. I would have to say I really enjoyed Super Mario Brothers 3 when I was a kid the most. And guess what? For more reasons than just the game itself, really fell in love with the sounds, the music, and that really inspired me to start researching video game composers. And so I listen to a lot of music composed by people who play and create video games. So that definitely had big inspiration. We played Overwatch, my brother and I, amongst our friends, we played Overwatch for 5 years straight. We played Gears of War 2 for about 3 or 4 years straight. And then for my frat brothers, we definitely played a lot of Madden down in Memphis. So yeah, between Memphis and Mississippi, we played a lot of time Madden football. So somewhere in there's a favorite game, and each one of those has taken a different part of my life. So yeah.
How have video games changed or evolved throughout the years?
Oh, well, I think the easiest one for everyone is internet, right? Mm-hmm. Internet definitely has made a way for people to connect in games in a way that, wasn't beforehand. I think when you kind of think about, just the evolution of games over time, you think about the arcades in the early days of gaming with, Namco and a few other things between Pac-Man, and the community was very much built around a brick and mortar building. As that business fell through the early to mid 80s, the rise of the home console came along because the technology made it possible for people to really have robust experiences. Then what we started noticing through the 90s, after the home consoles really kind of move us out of arcades, games started really developing these really big narratives, right? There's not too much story you can tell, I mean, let's think about the first Legend of Zelda game on Nintendo. Mm-hmm. You got text, every hour or something like that. And that text has to do a really heavy lift trying to get people to go, oh, so here's the narrative of the game. And so as, things like, as the technology developed, the ability to tell stories became really more, effective. You could do a movie, you could include audio. I remember for most of my Metal Gear Solid heads, you'll remember on the PlayStation demo disc, they had, close to 20 minutes of a conversation, which blew our minds at the time. But it was able to tell us a really big story in that way. So, I think connectivity is a really big driver. I think being able to tell a narrative that's unique to a different audience is a really big thing that I would always connect with people. And then I think for today's kid, they're essentially making their own worlds with games like Minecraft and Fortnite. The ability to craft and build in games and focusing on that skill, I think a lot of people take for granted how kids are really kind of creatively building their own space. And I think that's so valuable, because the reason I liked video games as a kid was because it was the television that I was able to control, right? TV was a very passive experience to me, and we would be like, this is happening to me. Whereas video games, even with a predetermined ending, I made it happen the way that I wanted to. Well, guess what? Kids today get to take that a step further. In Minecraft, they get a server that they get to build the world that they want to look at and set the objectives that they want to set. Even in Fortnite, as much as I think adults laugh at how much kids like it, I was joking with someone the other day. I said, well, it's a game where you have shooting in it. And as a kid, that's what we did. I was like, but guess what? The biggest skill, the most important skill in Fortnite is building. Building and crafting in that game is the most important part. It gives you strategic advantage. It gives you tactical maneuvers, all of that good stuff. So I think the last evolution, the way it's kind of changed, is today's kid, they really get to build their own universe.
Why do you think gaming became so popular during the pandemic?
I don't think it became more popular during the pandemic. I think more people realized its popularity because they didn't have anything else to do. I think it was really easy to start paying attention to things that you didn't pay attention to beforehand, right? And so, gaming has been $1 billion industry for over 2 decades now. So people are playing, and it hasn't stopped. It's not going anyplace. But I think, again, we've become more keen to the finer points of what gaming can provide, not only just kids, but all of us. Guess what? Most of us probably remain sane through being like, hey, I can communicate with my friends and interact with them in this game universe while I can't go out, right? And, I'm in charge of the Chicago Video Gamers Club. So we had tons of events where it was like, hey, come out to this arcade bar, or we're going to go to this concert, which all got shut down. Mm-hmm. But for us, we started doing the virtual get-togethers. And even though it wasn't the same, we were able to at least remain in communication. And that allowed us to be like, so there's a sense of normalcy, right? And you start to really appreciate when everything else fades away from you, even the game to some degree, the ability to just communicate with everybody and at least engage in some way, you really begin to kind of appreciate that. And I think that's really what grew. It's not so much the popularity, the appreciation for what this tool will, kind of let you do.
Okay, because I definitely bought a Nintendo Switch so I could
Okay.
I definitely did that.
And it was right on time. Animal Crossing, once again, another game, but guess what? You get to build the world that you want to live in, right? And there's no inherent objective. There's no winning or losing. You build what you want to build, and if you got friends, you invite those friends to come check out your space. I think that's a really great example of it.
What advice would you give other people who want to turn their hobbies into careers or businesses?
I would say find the void. One of the things that we were able to do when we really kind of hit our stride as a business, we were hosting our own tournaments and events, which was cool. But one of the things that really allowed us to hit our stride, to grow and expand, was we noticed the void in the live event space, right? So now it's commonplace that, Comic-Con is a big deal, right? Everybody knows, Hollywood actors are coming to town. That's a really big deal. At the time, in the, really at the turn of the decade in 2009, 2010, those were really, really niche events. Very few people were, super excited about it. But what we used to notice was that most of those people there were gamers, and they really would have enjoyed some type of gaming experience. Well, I knew what I liked doing, and I knew how to organize, and all of those things were really nice. But then I started to really look for the void in that business, right? And there were people there that wanted to do video games or engage people in games, but they didn't know what equipment to get. They didn't know, how to kind of say what activity should we even make if we had that. So, the services I was able to list out beforehand really came from, the group that I worked with, having a very, keen eye to being like, hey, so this is something you guys are really missing. And we don't just get together 3 days out of the year, to play in a video game event. We're consistently doing it. So we've got our finger on the pulse. We are, super up to date on how to do this. This is something we consistently put into practice. And finding that void really kind of helped us become the company that we are, right? At the time, once again, we were doing, events in rooms this big, right? And I think that was a really great start for us to kind of figure out what people liked and try to apply our process to it. But no, man, we really hit a second gear when we started to realize, hey, so here's a service that we can sell business to business. We're not just a business to consumer, kind of thing. We also have a business to business model. And guess what? It was rough and raggedy at first too. I didn't know how to sell to businesses, but once again, if you're passionate about it, you will figure that out. And, for somebody who didn't graduate with a degree in business management or anything like that, I certainly started to begin to negotiate contracts. I started to learn how to place our value proposition to a group and say, hey, so here's what we're valued at. I think the easiest one was figuring out how, electronic rentals go. But trying to say, like, hey, we provide tournament operation services for groups. Most people were like, that's not a service, until they tried it themselves, and then realized that, what I said earlier, how people, they remember a good time, but they really remember a bad time. Well, guess what? Mess up a tournament with $500 on the line. And do you think that people are going to have fond memories of that? And, we would watch a lot of these groups make their own attempt. And as happy as we were to see them enter into the space, I looked at it like it was money wasted, right? Because they spent money on a bunch of different things to happen. But if it failed and people don't want to do it again, then once again, we could have done a better job with that. And, I think that's really what was able to start, kind of pinpointing, at certain points where it was just like, well, hey, we're a group that really kind of takes care of this entire thing for you, and so that's really how we, kind of develop business in that way.
Where can people go to find out more about iPlayGames?
Well, the easiest place is our website, which is ipgnation.com. And then on all of our socials, we are iPlayGames, all 3 words. And on Instagram, I am IPG_CEO.
Okay, great. Before we wrap up, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I mean, the one thing I always try to tell people, and I think I touched on this just a little bit before, but I can't forget to press its importance. follow your dreams, figure out what it is that you're really passionate about, and then use that to kind of, direct your life. Because I tell people this, I had a really great job when I graduated from undergrad. But when it didn't make me happy and I wasn't fulfilled, a lot of the more sophisticated conversations we have around mental health now, I had at that time. I probably was really depressed. I probably was going through like, hey man, I'm going through fun withdrawals here. And, without having knowledge of what I was actually experiencing, you get paid a lot of money and be miserable. And I thought that that's how everybody lived. I said, well, you do a job and you just hate it, but you get the money, right? But it wasn't, I really didn't start living and enjoying myself until I started, to really reflect on who I was. And then I found a mission that I was able to sink my teeth into. So now find your passion, find your dream, however it is you express that. And really look for a way to, support yourself in that way. I always try to leave people with that message.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you guys for having me.
Remember to make plans to join us again next week for Conversations with the Citizen, the place where real